John, you remember we discussed when we spoke about our panel that it's good that it's not in the evening. Our guests will be fresh, you know. After this night, I'm not sure we are all fresh, but still, let's try to sound at least optimistic, okay?
I'm absolutely fine. I'm an ex-soldier and I brought my car and I put a bed in it and I slept in the -2 of the car park. So I'm absolutely fine today. So raring to go.
Great. Could you please tell us more about GlobSec and about your objectives here in Ukraine?
Yeah, GlobSec is a fiercely independent think tank and NGO. We try and sort of think of ourselves more of an action tank, so not too much thinking and plenty of doing. Typically, we publish 50 actionable reports a year, and we organize some major flagship conferences, and this year we're very happy for the first time to be a partner of the Kief International Economic Forum. So the organization was established in 2005 out of a student project. It's now grown with operations, headquarters in Bratislava, Vienna, Washington, Brussels and Kiev. We have 14 nationalities working in the team, which is about 90 strong, and we cover such things as defense and security, business and economy. Democracy and resilience focus very much on countering Russian disinformation across Europe, and we actually have a European element as well. We're considered to be the most influential think tank in CE. Our aims are bigger. We're not greedy, but we are hungry. So the question about why I'm here in Ukraine, or what we're doing in Ukraine. So first of all, if I may, a statement. How can we expect the world to support Ukraine if Central Eastern Europe doesn't stand with Ukraine? It's not an obligation. It's not something we have to, but it's a calling for us. And that's the message we want to leave behind. So we have 3 pillars to what we do in Ukraine with the team. We have a big focus on security, hard security, EU and NATO, reconstruction, and we focus very much on humanitarian demining, and our report, Walking on Fire, has been internationally acclaimed, and all the recommendations have been accepted by the Ukrainian government. We then have reconstruction of human capital, and that's focusing on PTSD, and some of you may know about our report, Scars on Their Souls. Sorry about this, too many reports. Which again has been internationally recognized and is something which we have working on concrete obligations. And obviously, again, countering Russian disinformation is a new project we're doing. So that's what we're up to at the moment in Ukraine, Nataliya.
Many directions, and actually all these directions refer to our topic today, to human capital. And people and human capital is definitely the vital asset for Ukraine. But let's come back to Europe and to Ukraine and to the impact the war in Ukraine has on Europe. How you see it, what you observe?
Well, I see it as follows, and it is not a straightforward answer. So, in Central Eastern Europe, people have recognized that Russia is not a partner, it's a threat. But then again, we have to clarify that with the Poles and the Baltics have been telling the rest of Central Europe that for 20 years. So the Poles have been proved right very clearly. I think for the younger generation, especially people who are around about 25, it has become quite frightening for them. My wife's team, all the young men arrived in work in tears, thinking they were going to be mobilized and going to war. And they're terrified of it. So it is a change. Now, what I have to be clear is that there's significant differences in Europe. And I'm not talking about politicians, I'm talking about the actual general population. So if we move to Southern Europe, to be quite honest, they don't consider this war their problem. Whereas if you go out of Europe and you go to Australia, they will say, you Europeans, you know, Sydney is further away, you know, from Canberra than Ukraine is from Munich. So it is your war, and you have to be part of it. So those are key things. Now, when we look at the effect, we have an immediate effect we had in Europe, which was the energy crisis. We had spiraling inflation, and growth was cut in 2023 from 2.5% to 0.5%, so significant. Inflation in non-Eurozone countries was hitting 18%, mortgages were rising, energy costs were rising, families were seeing an immediate effect, and obviously were suffering from that. And businesses were hit very, very hard as governments tried to protect the families. So, but the most disturbing thing for me is the success the Kremlin had in changing the narrative. And they actually managed in parts of Europe, especially in Germany and in Italy, and even in the country I live in Slovakia, to change the narrative that it actually was the energy companies and Western greed. And they were very successful in that because, unfortunately, typically 30% of the population in a lot of these countries are looking for an alternative narrative. And that's what the Russians are very successful at doing.
But let us not talk about the narratives. I want to come back to the human capital.
Yeah.
Europe definitely feels this impact, I mean the impact of war in Ukraine, because more than 6 million of people, of Ukrainians, left Ukraine since the full-scale invasion, and many of them live now in Europe. At the same time, according to your research, and this figure, by the way, 6.5, it is mentioned in your report, this one, Stolen Generations, yes. And according to your research, 57% of citizens of Central Eastern Europe, they consider migrants as a threat to their values, to their life, let's call it in general. What shall we do about that if we shall do something?
Now, I'm going to answer that question, but first I just want to mention something on stolen generations. The stolen generations we describe as the systematic violation of Ukraine's future. It is a war on the innocent. I would just like to read a couple of things from the report, if I may, and I am going to get back and answer that question properly, I promise. So, there's two elements to this. There is the Russian state trafficking of children from Ukraine, and there is the organized crime and criminals moving them to the West. And both parties we have to hold responsible, and this is something the GlobSec has to do. So, regarding Russia, I'll read it. At least 1,000 children from occupied Crimea Peninsula were displaced and sent to Russia to begin radicalization before the full-scale invasion. Some of those children have been assimilated into Russian culture, have died up in the battlefield fighting against Ukraine in Kremlin's brutal war. This is just a tragedy. Then we move to the other side, the criminals. And I'd like to just mention a bit of story about Elena. Exhausted but relieved after crossing into Romania from war-torn Ukraine, Elena ushered her young son and daughter into temporary accommodation where they could finally eat, wash, and sleep. She still needed to organize somewhere permanently to stay and almost broke down when she told the volunteers at a nearby refugee center about the hell her family had been through. Where are you staying? They promised to help. But when they turned up at her new home the next day, they told her they were taking her children to Switzerland in a van full of other women. The men looked at her in a sleazy way. Her daughter was petrified. Eleanor was ordered, not asked, to fetch her son from the other room. They looked him up and down and said, then they became angry. Eleanor challenged them, asked for their IDs. Then quickly, she said she'd get her son's bags. She grabbed her children, she left, and she ran. These volunteers were targeting refugees to traffic them. And this is something we have to hold also Western governments responsible for. And that's why we're working on this report, and it will come out next year, and we'll be doing advocacy. Now, back to your question. And I know I'm not going to go too much on about this, because last time I did it, I had 100 people in tears, including myself. But we have to get the important things out. So about your question, 57%. Well, actually, it's not 57% about Ukrainians. It's 29% feel that the Ukrainians are a threat. Now, I will then reverse that and say that means that 71% believe that Ukraine is not a threat to their culture, which means they welcome them. And that's the figure we need to think about. Yes, in Bratislava, the second language in schools is Ukrainian. That's a fact, yeah? But Ukrainians have integrated effectively into society. But we have to recognize that 90% are women and children who have actually moved there. I think one of the important things we have to do, and this is what we have to do to change the mindset, so I'm not pointing that finger at you, is that migrants from war, or refugees from war, are the most vulnerable to suffer from PTSD, even more than veterans on the front line. They have two challenges. They've left their home, they've abandoned their country, and the trauma also comes from the fact they don't think they can contribute to help their country. And so this is something we're very keen to communicate so that the 71% becomes a stronger 71%, and the 29% who have reservations then understand it's the right thing to do.
Could you please then tell us more about the project which you have here in Kief, not in the whole Ukraine, in Kief?
It's in Kief, yeah. But it's an international with international help.
About PTSD.
Yes, okay. Right. PTSD, scars on the souls. It draws on decades of experience from the UK, from the US, Israel, and the Western Balkans, with 20 international experts working with this on this. We've done already significant advisory and advocacy. We have 28 Ukrainian medical establishments on board with us, wanting to take this to the next step. We've brought over UK veterans. We've brought over a UK trauma specialist who has 25 years of treating British Special Forces in PTSD. What the report recognizes is the current treatments are not really effective. Even in Israel, it's less than 30%. And that's the Israelis explaining to us. Now, examples of challenges we're facing, and we're not here to tell Ukraine what to do. We're here to open everybody's eyes to see how things are failing. So in the United Kingdom, my country, 17% of the prison population are veterans from the Iraq and Afghanistan war. Now that sounds horrendous, but it's actually much worse than that, because they're only in there for crimes such as murder, rape, violence, assault. It's nearly 50% of the violent crime unit is veterans. In the UK, for veterans, homelessness is a real problem. In the US, a friend of mine commanded a brigade during the last Iraq war, and he was in the hard battles and they lost a lot of soldiers. But he has lost 7 times more through suicide since that war. So if there's any questions in anybody's mind that we need to do something about it, then we do. If we look at the current treatments, and this is going to take a bit of a while to get through this, but it's an important topic. 80% of veterans are in denial. So psychotherapy methods, 80% abandoned that treatment after the first round. Now let me tell you a story about one veteran, which is going to, because I like to bring things to reality and experience. So one veteran, highly decorated Special Forces soldier, was demobbed, and he was this bodyguard of one of our Secretary of States. And he did the job for 8 years. No sign of PTSD. 0. Highly effective, brilliant man. 8 years in, he broke down. He could not sleep. Because he could not sleep, he could not work. Because he needed to try and get to work, he started taking drugs. He lost his home, he lost his family. Our specialist, Mandy, who knew of him, because she's in the Special Forces group and nobody knew where he'd gone, found him in Scotland living with gypsies as a homeless man. He cannot be cured. So these people have to be engaged with early. Now, some recommendations to Ukraine. Now, what I want to explain and promise you is we don't just talk about it, we actually try and do something, and we will be doing something. So, in January, we're bringing specialists out, and we've had some funding from one of our corporate partners, and we're going to run workshops and training courses for medics who want to learn about what we're doing, and for families. And then we're going to develop a new course, which is for corporate CEOs and HR executives, to see what they should learn about the families who are also suffering. Because in Ukraine, the trauma...
Sorry, do you plan to work with the veterans or with the civil society as well?
Well, we're working with civil society, definitely. We're not directly going to work with the veterans. We do have some veterans. We have a sniper, Roman, who we're going to help with treatment. But we want to train and empower the Ukrainians to do it themselves and to bring the technology and the money to actually do it. So we're going to be actively, but you have to train the medics how to first deal and recognize PTSD. The families need to understand it. One of the biggest problems is, I mean, I had a friend of mine who came back from Bosnia and murdered his wife, yeah? This is very personal.
John, I've asked you to sound more positive, please.
I will get more positive, I promise. So, the bit that I want to get to is that what we're basically proposing is a Rubik's Cube of a full turnkey PTSD solution focused on neurobiology. And it is groundbreaking, and the success rates have been above 70%. So that's what we want to do. Now, for Ukraine, your enemy, Russia, will not be treating its soldiers. This is your discriminator for your recovery, to engage early and to focus on the PTSD. The Russians can face the same problems as the French did when their soldiers returned from the American War of Independence, which kicked off the French Revolution. We want to make sure Ukraine gets ahead. Yeah? And the reason why Ukraine has to be the pioneer, has to be the leader in the world, is unfortunately 50 to 80% of your veterans will be suffering from complex PTSD and brain trauma. The positive is the reaction of the Ukraine medical establishment to what we're proposing has been whole adoption, willingness to open their eyes and work with us. So that is the positive.
Got you. I don't think we have to compare Ukraine to Russia in terms of this approach, because definitely in Ukraine, this human-centric approach, when we talk about any aspect, you know, of our current life and of future recovery, this is the key point, you know. And when you mentioned that those refugees who live now in Europe, in Central Eastern Europe, in general, they are vulnerable, how we are to return them to Ukraine? Because, you know, actually we are all vulnerable. I mean, both those Ukrainians who live here and those who left. There are lots of psychological and mental health issues to be solved. So how we are to bring them back and to make them active part of, active participants of recovery process, active participants of life here, active participants of after the war period.
Okay, so a couple of thoughts on that, and I'll be quick. So, first of all, before any peace negotiations, in my humble opinion, these children which have been forcibly exported to Russia must be brought back. And that is an important symbol for the rest of the Ukrainians who are in Europe, that it's time to return. The West has its own responsibility also to look at the women who have been trafficked abroad. That's another topic. Then we have to look at why will people return? Well, Ukraine has to make it an attractive place to return. So no more discussion about Ukraine being a low-cost manufacturing center for European Union. No, no. High-tech, high-value, high-quality, innovative, high-quality workplace, digital, transparent government. Yeah, you're already getting there on some of these things.
And actually, all these Ukrainians who live now in Europe, they are kind of ambassadors of these values, you know, because they often compare life here and life there in terms of these digital aspects, in terms of, like we spoke, our DIA, you know, and things like that.
So yes, so the working practices and working standards in Ukraine and the salaries will have to be at a level where people want to return. It doesn't necessarily have to be the same as Germany. My son, who's Slovak, he's working in Slovakia because his standard of living is higher than working in London with a higher salary. There is a balance to make. But these are the things that have to be done. And I can see things that the Ministry of Digital Transformation, I got an SMS the other night from the State Secretary, John, you can now get married in Ukraine online. Yeah? All your documents. These things break down corruption at low levels, and this actually revigorates society. Now I'm going to end on a positive. Yeah? Okay.
Please do.
Okay. So there is a trend identified in GlobSec trends that actually contradicts the Kremlin's information influence efforts. And that is that 74% of the 94 million friendly people living as your neighbors and around, 94 million, remember, larger than the population of Ukraine, 74% are in favor of continued military support for Ukraine. That is 69.5 million people standing with Ukraine. So, Slava Ukraini.
Героям слава. These are definitely good news. Thank you so much. John, thank you for this conversation. Thank you for your support for the work GlobSec is doing. And we are waiting for January next year and for information about your project about PTSD. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here. Thank you. Bye.
So, especially for the Kiev International Economic Forum, Radus have been organizing surveys I'm happy to present. And this year's topic is human capital. Everyone talks about it, everyone thinks about it because it is an extremely sensitive topic for most of us. We can see what's happening in our country, how to combat the crisis of human capital. A few words about the survey. We've had thousands of respondents across Ukraine, aged from 18 to 65. We conducted the survey on the 8th of October, so 1 month ago. A few words about Ukrainians. What human capital do we have at this moment? A few statements here. First, Ukrainians are educated. Comparing to a lot of European nations, they have, most of them have high education. They are professional. And the second quality, they are very adaptive. 39% of our respondents have master's diploma, 22% have bachelor's diploma, and together it's more than a half. We all know that in Ukraine we have this tradition of getting higher education, and it is not bad. The level of English language skills, before we measured this indicator even before the war, and you can see the trend on the slide. People started actively learning English, and this indicator is in fact higher among young Ukrainians, but the war became an impetus for us as a society to integrate faster, think faster, and get ready better to communicate with Europeans, with foreigners. Statement number 2, Ukraine is a territory of high turbulence, but it is our strength, our benefit. Since 90s, our society has been going through numerous crises, challenges. We remember the year 1992, 96, 2008, 2014, 2004. And these were stress points, and after them, people had to adapt. 73% changed to the area of activities during their life, and 41% changed to their workplace within the last 3 years, so during the war. It means that from the point of view of employment, Ukrainian society is not only mobile, it is resilient. It can adapt. 82% of people want to look for the next place of employment in Ukraine. People in search of a better workplace are ready to changes within a year, which means that they plan for a short-term perspective. Basically, no one plans for more than 1 year ahead. People have compiled their vision of future. The main driver of decision-making about the change of employment is money, of course. We can all see how motivation packages change and grow on the market in Ukraine. It's a clear trend. There is a competition for high-skilled workers, and it keeps increasing dramatically. 58% of elderly seek for official employment. As to young people, it's not a factor. So it's an area where we as a society have to grow so that people rather choose official employment. But young people have their own specifics. Young people of up to 35 years old think money and comfortable conditions at a workplace are of the same importance. They think psychological balance, free time, relations, opportunity to work remotely are important. So while engaging different age groups, employers have to pay attention to different aspects. Third statement, Ukrainians are ready to change and to quickly to improve their life. Most people are ready to change their profession again, and they are sure that they will master new skills if needed. So if we remember the previous slide, if the respondents see financial benefit and comfortable workplace conditions, they will study and master new skills to correspond to these requirements. We all remember the boom of IT industry before the start of the full-scale war, when people of other professions, completely different, within 1 year, 1.5 years, became professionals in this area just to join this industry, which was seeing significant growth. Availability of opportunities to change qualifications and grow at the current workplace. A lot of people see these opportunities, but we remember that 70% of people think it's possible that they will change their workplace within a year. So There is no such a value as working at the same workplace during the whole life, like our parents did. There is a value of quick changes, quick adaptations, and in the short-term perspective, achieve as big result as possible. The main motives to change profession, we can see that it's higher salary, and the main barrier why a person can doubt as to whether they can get this profession is the high cost of training or complexity of new skills. Gender issues. Well, gender issues is not a very specific title. It was about whether Ukrainian women are ready to undergo training to get typically male professions. We can see that 50% say yes, and this figure is the same among men and women. So theoretically, women consider this path. 60%, almost 58% believe that actually women are capable of doing typically male work, but the main barrier is reservations as to physical capacities. If the business process in the company is arranged the way that physical efforts have to be put, it can be a reservation. For women, we can see that the second barrier is difficulty to manage family life and work life at the same time, and the third barrier is unequal payment. And we have to talk about it, we have to explain it, we have to work with it, definitely. Because it's great that this barrier is now is something women are conscious of, because we were discussing the same topic before the war, and we could see the result that they think everything is fine in Ukraine with the equality, with the equal payment. Now we can see that they are conscious of the problem of the disparity. Engaging elderly, it's another trend we discuss in business community. 70% of people, of pensioners, are ready to consider working after they retire. The reason is there is one main reason. The pensions are low and people are ready to work as long as they can. The main barriers elderly see why it's difficult to be employed is limited number of vacancies for elderly. We still see age limits in many job offers and people just don't apply. Second barrier is health problems. And we could hear during the previous panel that there are such problems as PTSD, and the war has an impact on our elderly as well, unfortunately. Optimism, despite everything, it's a default parameter Ukrainians have, and it allows our society to deal with very complex situations such as war. 74% of people believe, or rather believe, that investments will come to Ukraine after the end of the war. And they believe that new working places will appear. Why I would like to underscore this aspect, because now for Ukrainians in Ukraine and abroad, the main driving force for getting back to work is not even a security factor. It's stability on the workplace with high salary.
What is needed for happiness? I would like to wrap up at the positive note. I will try at least. But it's not just entertainment that we require, but certain recipe, because what is needed for the happiness, it is also what has to be done to get back all the Ukrainians, to make them come back. So I do believe that the foundation of our human capital, of course, we can talk here about the engagement of migrants from countries of Middle East or Far East or from somewhere else, but the basic of our recovery of human capital is for our people to return. We see it's a very simple matrix. Gradius has surveys, and we asked about the feeling of subjective happiness. Ukraine is easily found here. We all understand that to be happy in our country is now a pretty complicated task, but despite all of that, to understand what is needed for happiness, we compared various countries. For me personally, it was extremely interesting that Germany and what else is there? Italy, yes, Italy. For them, family in the middle, they really care about the presence of family, the family relations. But getting back to Ukraine, number one is health of me and my relatives. Number two, safety. Number three, finances. That's it. Thank you. Thanks a lot, dear colleagues. Thank you. Have a nice day. Thank you. Thank you.
Дякую вам дуже. Так, мікрофони у всіх є. У мене для початку...
So thanks a lot. You all have the mics. To start with, I have a short question to each of you that will be the following. What changes do you see at the labor market since the beginning of the full-scale invasion? In general, because you all have your own aspect, I mean, professional, personal, what do you see? Let's start probably from Nataliya. The person is in the center of all the processes right now. Now we have such a format that is called by business human-centric organization, when big amount of attention is now paid to the condition of people, education of companies, how to understand their states, how to deal with them. The process of onboarding is much faster now, the process of adaptation, because if before we had time to adapt, then now the life cycle of employees of the organization is getting much shorter. So all the processes connected with onboarding, with adaptation are much faster. And from what is not so pleasant, not so positive, recently we were talking about so-called famine. Now we have famine, actually, so famine, and it's now every employee is a diamond. And if this person is in the organization, the most important thing is to integrate this person, to onboard this person, and to create such conditions that during that period of life cycle that the person is in the organization, so that the person can implement his or her talent in the best possible way. In a nutshell. Hello, I would probably be even shorter. I absolutely support Nataliya, and not only business is facing with it as of now, but also state business, if you talk about human centricity and work with the staff. As you all understand, now it is the labor market and of course structural unemployment, but probably we will be talking about that in more details later. Yes, it's hard to disagree with my colleagues, and I also would like to say that big tendency that we now see at the labor market is that involvement of people with disabilities and veterans is not a corporate social responsibility now. It's a matter of survival for business. And one of the tendencies that we are also observing, it is engagement of women to labor market, and they now try to work at stereotypically male professions. Well, it's a little bit difficult for me. It's strange for me to hear this engagement of women to labor market, because well, women has always been there. But yes, if they are now working at some positions that were previously considered as males, then yes, I absolutely agree with what has already been mentioned. But I also would like to add at the same time that probably now the biggest amounts of various trends is happening at the labor market. And first and foremost, it is probably the lack, the biggest lack of people and especially qualified people. Because if you're talking about lack, it is probably around 30% of losses of labor market because of those people who left or who are now defending our country within armed forces of Ukraine. But at the same time, we understand that it is also the most active part of population. So if we are talking about most qualified people, in particular managers, and the lack is even bigger. I don't know what percentage should I say here, but it's definitely 40 or maybe even 50. So if to talk about the challenges that business is facing right now, that it's something that has never been in the whole history. And it's probably worth mentioning, especially here when we are talking about the tendencies for the next year, that those matters, that those tools that before were used to engage employees, they are not working now. They are not working and they will not be working. Salaries, work conditions, and some other perks and bonuses are not enough to engage people to work. That's why the biggest challenge is this question, how to engage them, how to attract them. And here, of course, we have the answer. There are no periods where there are no replies, no answers. Of course, there are answers. And first and foremost, we are talking here about census. Companies have to learn, they have to recognize for themselves and then to learn, attract people with those ideas which they might follow and join this or that company. I can talk more here now, but since it's the first short question, I will stop here. And I can say that the key tendency is reconsidering of motivation while attracting and while further adaptation and development of a person in each company. I agree with that fully, and we will get back to that statement and we will talk about it in more details. My first question is to Tatiana, and it is in that context, in the following context. If we look at the numbers that we see now in Ukraine, that we have now in Ukraine concerning demographic crisis, then right now we have more than 30 million of population, yes, taking into account different data, taking into account temporarily lost territories, taking into account various data, more than 30 million. And according to the forecast to 2041, the number can be even less. It can be 28.9 million. But at the same time, Ukraine has ambitious goals, not only to survive, but also to win, to recover, already start recovering the country. And of course, we are getting here to that statement about lack of people, lack of specialists on all levels, in all spheres. I have the following question. Which spheres of economy suffers the biggest deficit of employees, and it's a question to you as representative of the government, what is the government doing in this direction? What are the plans? You have mentioned about numbers and forecasts, and I am sure that many of those who are present here heard about 6.8 million of additional employees as International Employment Organization informed us. Ministry of Economy also had separate research, and we understood that we had 4.5 additional employees in the employment market, labor market, and we understand that for our GDP grow, we need more employees. But every economist, specialist know, and it will not be a surprise for you, that we also need to take into account performance and effectiveness of work. If we take, for example, Denmark example, then they have 7 times less people than in Ukraine at the beginning of the full-scale invasion, but GDP is 2 times bigger. If we take Poland as an example, then we understand that there amount of people, employees especially, hasn't changed that much since 1990, but GDP is 2 times as big as the Ukrainians. Because why? Because they also engage investments from the EU, and we understand that what government should work on is not only creation of inclusive labor market and creation of that labor market that will return those people who left, but also investment into productivity of our employees. And of course, here a big field for cooperation and core commitment of government, business, NGOs. I will never be tired of repeating that. It's creation of bigger amount of programs that will help Ukrainians to be more competitive at the labor market. These are state programs that we have. It's programs that are supported by international partners. For example, Ukrainian Coursera, it's Reskill program that is now acting, and it has more than 30,000 internship. But at the same time, it is nothing because in Ukraine we have 8 million roughly of economically inactive population. So these are people who are not looking for work for some reasons. Either these are people with disability, or these are veterans that couldn't find their place in the labor market, or women who cannot combine their home routine and work obligations. So that's why a huge concentration of our joint efforts should be on activating those groups of economically inactive society. And of course, it's not only Ukrainian trend, it is a European world trend. And I hope that you also have read the report of Mario Draghi concerning how Europe should be more competitive. And he has mentioned that huge role of this advance of Europe also depends on bigger employment of women. That's why it's not only Ukrainian tendency, activation of economically inactive society population. And answering your question, which sphere of economy suffers the biggest lack of employees, I would answer it in the following way. Globally, the lack of employees is observed in all the spheres. When we are talking with employers, then first, for the very long time, of course, it's not a surprise, their biggest pain is lack of employees. Previously, it was more a lack of financial resources to continue their business, but here we, as the state, should rely on two things: requirements of business and our strategic vision, where we need to invest the amount of employees, effectiveness, productivity. And of course, here, straightforward answer will be, of course, the answer what economy we are going to build. We are building complex, highly technological economy in processing areas of industries. That's why we invest lots of efforts into teaching those people who are going to be in this sphere, project management and so-called blue-collar professions. So that's why it is such a trend, such a tendency, processing industry, complex economy, technologies that are created in Ukraine remain in Ukraine and not only exported abroad. And of course, engagement of women and activization of economically inactive society. Thank you. I wanted to ask Yulia, what are the programs? Because I understand that State Employment Service is actually responsible for implementation of those programs. Those programs that Tatiana has mentioned on re-education for elderly generation, for also for those who would like to become entrepreneurs and so on and so forth. What are the programs that are being done by the state right now? And maybe some of these programs are actually joint projects, as Ms. Berezhna has mentioned, where we have a state, a public sector, maybe some other partners, foreign partners. Yes, I would like to also support Tatiana, because previous year, together with the Ministry of Economy, Federation of Employers, we conducted survey, and we conducted the survey on employers, and they have mentioned that 40% of them really felt a deficit of employees, and it's processing industry, it's energy. So actually, it's all the sectors of economy. And here I might clearly say that European countries, they also feel they have the same trends. It's just we also have the war additionally. Concerning the programs and generally re-education, if to talk about, you saw Grado's questionnaire, and you saw that the number of the percentage of people who are ready for re-education, and next year 82% are ready to change their work. And I would like to talk a little bit more about service of employment. I would like to break those stereotypes about that service because for the recent years, the service has changed significantly. And as of now, we are not only talking about the fact that we register unemployed and paying unemployment aid, because basically, since the beginning of the war, there are much less people registered as unemployed. But today we are changing approaches to work. That's what Artur is talking about. Standard methods are not working at all right now. You apply for something, you're looking for a job because there are lots of vacancies, but there is lack of people. So what are we facing with right now? How are we working? For today, the method of working with employers is the following. So the companies come to us and they say that taking into account efforts of government, the president, we can manufacture lots of products, but we lack people of certain professions. And just recently, in this example, I would like to mention that the company approached us. They're working in Kamyanska. They have contract for half a year ahead with European expert, and they need 150 people to organize the second shift of work. And if we look at that list of people that we have at employment service, of course, we will not be able in Kreminska city immediately 150 people here. That's why here we have non-standard methods of work. What do I mean? And here I also support Artur that now employers, and actually lots of them are ready for that, they are ready to change the approaches to searching for people. In this example, I can say that the owner of the company is saying that I am ready to pay the rent costs. They even can help with Osela crediting and give the first contribution, all possible social packages, good salary. So what the service should do if there are no such people? We will also offer re-education, but today we are going beyond only work with unemployment. We are using a unified portal, Work.ua, Robota.ua, where there are CVs, and with the help of community we are doing that, because Kamyanska, for instance, is Dnipro region. We are here at the level of communities of Dnipro and Zaporizhzhia region, especially now where there are lots of IDPs. For them, it is they're interested if someone might pay for their houses, for their flats, and good salaries, so they are ready to relocate, and that's why we offer full package from employer. We get communities, we gather communities, and that's how we are looking for our possible employees.
As to the programs on retraining, currently it's a must-have for us. We have all engaged in. Is it the only program or is it the most successful one? It's one of the most successful programs implemented by the Employment Service. For example, this year we trained 60,000 of people. So people who were registered as unemployed can undergo free training in Ukraine if they do not have the funds for the training. If they are registered, the Employment Foundation pays for their training with further employment. We can also train potential employees according to the needs of employers. We can train individually on enterprises. We can adapt our training programs according to the requirements of employers. In addition, we have a voucher program in Ukraine, and not only unemployed citizens, but other categories that require it can use it. These are IDPs, people with disabilities, veterans, and people older than 45 years old. When they choose the voucher program, the state compensates 30,000 hryvnias. We have already 35 professions in the list. What are the most popular? The most popular ones are, well, last year it was psychology, this year young nurse, and then drivers, tractor drivers, and welders. So last year, psychology was occupying the first place. Yes, there was such a trend. So it's one of the programs I invite employers to participate in. We are ready to organize training for your employees and retrain population in general. I think there is lack of communication as to this topic. We already have this information, but overall, this information could be more accessible for employers so that they are able to improve their staff composition in different regions and different areas. We are currently working on global communication strategy. It's not criticism. I'm just reflecting on what I've heard. And as to the surveys, as a person who works with figures, last year's surveys really confirm this trend because everything changes rapidly. I mean, what you mentioned in the beginning of your speech. Yes, everything is changing very quickly. We can even see the dependence of the state of mind of our people on the intensity of air attacks. Atu, you had something to add? Yes, and I have even two things to add now. First, as to the engagement of people who, due to different reasons, are not in the labor market yet. I wanted to add some positive things here. We have ideas, and in some sense, I feel guilty because we didn't do it 10 years ago. We will try to take very important steps and reach out to small towns, not only big cities. I understand that for sure there are people who do not use modern technologies like Work UA site. We mean here the platform Work UA. Yes, or some other state platforms. So these people basically live in Dmytrenko settlement or other towns that are not far from big cities. If we speak about the west of Ukraine, there are a lot of small towns or villages of 2,000 people, and they are not part of the general labor market. They do not know how to find employment opportunities, and the enterprises don't know it either. I know such cases when in Dnipro, big entrepreneurs stick announcements to shop doors, etc., and that's how they find workers for themselves. It happens in small towns and villages. I think we will do something soon, and we will try to reach out to potential employees. Very often they can work as electricians, as guardians, as other technical personnel. They might be 60 years old, living not too far from Dnipro, but without any job. And for them, the word CV or resume are even unknown. It contradicts a little bit with what Eugenia said, because we seem to have very high level of education, etc. It doesn't contradict. These things coexist. There is another story. There are many people who work in cities but with low salaries, and in fact they are great workers, and often they are not ready to go to interviews and try to improve their financial conditions. They are in some way absent from the market, but we'll try to change it. It's my first statement. Next one, since we are at the Economic Forum and we are speaking about our future, to be honest, maybe it's an unpopular thing, but we have to talk about it. I have a feeling of schizophrenia in some sense, because on the one hand we invest a lot of resources to train people for them to become visible for the market. On the other hand, people who are capable, who know how to work, who are specialists, go to work, then enlistment offices representatives come and they are mobilized. Well, here is the question: can't we find a formula after 3 years of full-scale invasion to, if not protect employees, then to have some guarantees? Because we train people, then we lose them. It's not a question to you, but we should not leave this question without answer. There is this interesting story. I will not give you specific surnames, but there is an organization working in construction area. They signed a contract in Dnipro region. Alexei must remember it. It was in our oblast. It was an agreement to build some, let's say, installations or premises for the military. They refused to perform their obligations because there was the risk of mobilization. We have to find an answer to this. It's the 3rd year of war, and we would like to have this dialogue. You all understand that the times we are going through are complicated, and we have a lot of willingness to find a balance between people who defend us and people who support our economy, their workers paying taxes to fund weapons for those who defend us on the front line. Of course, the situation we find ourselves in is not typical. We cannot look at best practices, find answers to these questions in different manuals. It's something we have to try ourselves by improving mobilization procedure, booking procedure, and we as a government do everything we can to find this balance. We all know that our state had seen its independence taken away for a lot of times in history, and these problems are obvious, and we have a common goal in this sense. I think it's a question for a separate discussion, at least in this format. I think we lack some members of the panel discussion who would be able to tell us specifics in this area. I have a question to Nataliya. We were speaking about adaptation of internal processes and the exhausted employees, which affects the quality. I cannot compare us with Poland or Denmark. The level of stress we have here is different. But let's go back to all these aspects of changes. What should be changed? What should employers change in their approaches, and what can they use from the management point of view, to retain people, to support them for the workers to give the best result and achieve some kind of satisfaction from their work. I will start by saying that in the beginning of the war, we invited specialists from Israel to tell Ukrainian businesses how to work to improve resilience. Now, we have a huge request from Israel. Now they want Ukrainian businesses to tell them about resilience and how to increase it. Speaking about how organizations change in their interactions with people, one of the most striking examples is the courses, training courses about how to teach in university groups where they have former servicemen. And we now have courses for adaptation on potential colleagues of the veterans who come back. And they also have to adapt as well as the servicemen who come back to civilian life. And it's no longer about inclusion. We could see in Western newspapers, it's about our real inclusion, which we should see in this space. We as businesses have to provide physical opportunities for people with disabilities. It's also about work with the mental component. We had a period in our operations when we were saying that every manager has to be a psychologist in a way. Now, fortunately, we are no longer saying that managers have to be psychologists for their employees, because the time of the manager, the time of a leader is most precious in the organization. And either we have all the employees who had a chance to cry, or we have visionary ideas. And now we think that a professional certified psychologist have to be employed as a staff member in organizations. Before, we had HR departments responsible for development and selection process. Now psychological support has to be part of operations. When we speak about neuromanagement, we are speaking about what it means to be a human. And Eugenia spoke a lot about the primary value of security. So from the point of view of neuromanagement, psychological security is of the same importance as physical security. And if we as an organization cannot ensure physical security and safety, the level of psychological safety is something we can ensure, and we can do it by organizing interactions and communications. So for many companies, it's necessary to understand that workplace is one of the most important foundations of people, and it's something which holds them. We are looking for this feeling of psychological safety, which means understanding of your own value, of your own impact, senses, when we understand what we are doing and why we are doing that. These are the aspects that have to become the basics to, in terms of organizations of working environment. So we have to think about our reactions, and we react not only to the events themselves, it's also about the state we perceive these events in. So we have to think about the motivation as well. There are many study findings saying that it's not money that motivates employees, and soon we won't be able to find the right balance between the level of salary and the inflation we can see in our country. So people have to be able to impact the situation. They need to have motivation. They have to be in a stable uh, psychological state, and also they need to have emotional competence. There are still managers who say that workplace is not a place for emotion, but we have to develop emotional literacy, and these will be answers to why we do what we do, why we feel that we want the working day to end soon. I really like the phrase that efficiency does not depend on the number of people only, and be always busy is in use stupidity. We can see this new trend. So we need to organize the context, not for longer work, but for more efficient work. We can also mention here the term of resilience, which can be exported already by Ukraine. Well, we've already studied everything as to resilience. Now we use the word stamina because resilience works well when we know what term we have, what delays we have, and stamina is something we can rely on when there is no endpoint in sight. Yes, we should also think about how we can use it in public sector. Can I add something? Just a few words. Because we started talking about psychology and this care about people's states. We are actually here in a dangerous topic. We've always been there. All the topics we're discussing here are quite tricky. I haven't even voiced all the critical statements and all the figures, so we stay in this tricky topic. To be honest, I wanted to say that I do not agree at all with what you said. Now, it's good that then I heard some things I agree with. And first of all, it's the statement that the work gives people senses and the sense that they keep living. And now it's important to address those responsible for employees. It's CEO and HRD, the managers, the heads. But in HRD, they decide on the culture. In the company, they set some rules, and to some extent, they even create rules for CEO. In many companies, they do that. They decide on the culture they will have in the company. And the tricky aspect here is that a lot of HRDs started acting as grannies who put a hat and gloves on their children. They start feeding them with some candies, and they forbid to do exercises outside. It looks like we complain here. I just want to speak about danger we have in the country. It's true that it's hard for all of us, and when we start caring about people in such a way that probably should go home earlier, it's a lack of culture. We have to do something about that. Yes, but it's very important to know about specific examples. Let's remember that case with a company that was dealing with furniture. there was an air attack which destroyed their warehouse, and they renewed their operations in other city, and no one was complaining about their psychological state.
В якій все добре, є зарплата, є можливість, але дві HRD, яких я змінив, кожен раз намагалися допомагати людям залишатися вдома, потурбуватися, знайти їм психологів, щоб вони ще більше занурилися в свій критичний стан, і замість того, що давайте зберемося,
even deeper into their critical state, and was instead
те, що ми маємо зробити, переможемо в цьому. А для цього треба
staying instead of doing this, they needed to do what? They needed to change needed to go to work. But they say, no, if you want, you can stay at home. Everything is okay. When they are sitting in those four walls for how long it's possible, but there are lots of care. No, the manager does not have right to invite them to come to the office. No, there is no right to tell let's hug those who are at the front line. I personally was prohibited to do that. We had conflict in the company where HRD was saying that no, you don't have such a right, and said no, I don't have right to just to invite. It's not that I am ordering somebody to do something, but you are putting them under threat. But they are adults, they can make their own choices. No, it's your authority and you put them under danger. But what can we talk? How can we talk about our victory here if we just care and stay at home and just sit and think about our psychological condition and mental state? Just one remark is that they are really worried that HRDs themselves tell that before that, when they were putting on some vacancies at some kind of search engine, they saw 40 replies, and now they see only one, and that's why they're really worried to lose that person, because they're afraid that they will not find another one. But the matter is that when people stay at home and really lose motivation, lose their energy, stop communicating with each other, we are kind of trying to protect them, but well, really. But we are losing when we hire unprofessional HRDs. Yes, I agree with that completely. Yes, it's about standards of HRD. It's great, and adaptivity of the system of employee management in the context of war. Because if they still measure it as it was before, then we have what we have. And here is the question only to professionality of those people that we as CEOs or managements led to our organization. So yes, but it will be working effectively in the company when the head from HRD, when the managers and HRD speak one language, see eye to eye, and do not order and do not have any kind of arguments. Let me add here then, could you please tell the main role of HRD? Who HRDs work on? Who's the main client of HRD? Is that employees or CEO of the company? HR's partners. HRD is first of all partner of CEO and helps them to adapt processes and systems so that people who work in organization can in the easiest way obtain the best results. So first and foremost, HRD should synchronize everything with the CEO, and only then talk with the team. Yes, only like that. It's mostly, it's not those people who only dealing with organization of New Year parties or that bring you complaints of their colleagues. Yes, I see here 3 separate topics that can be used for next events, and we can have a discussion, and we need to limit in time in such discussion. I just wanted to make to talk about the event. Maybe you will mention at the end. At the end, when we come to the end, you will be able to mention that. But we haven't covered one very important aspect, and I would like to hear your opinion about returning of Ukrainians and what should we do with those young people who left to study and they already planning to stay there, or maybe they are not planning. In any case, you see, according to last research, practically half of respondents that left, they are not planning to come back for various reasons. The lack of employment, the lack of housing, safety, various factors. But what to do with those young people? How to make them come back? I would like to start with Tatiana. Yes, thank you. And answering this question, I think that we all need to remember that Ukrainians, wherever they are subjects and they are subjective, and they themselves will make a decision whether they want to stay or to leave, and if to stay, then for how long. And if we are talking about return, I think that we need to substitute the word of return with the narrative of cohesion, of unity, that it means that you're valuable for us as Ukrainian citizens, wherever you are, and whatever and whenever you might make this decision to come back. And I think it's not a surprise for everyone. No one is going to dispute that definitely only opportunities can make Ukrainians come back. And also understanding that in their home country, in 1 year, they can achieve something that you cannot achieve abroad in 10, because abroad, most probably, you will be level lower in qualification and you will not be doing what you were doing in Ukraine. And the role of the state here is, of course, first of all, to create opportunities. We have talked a lot about this. The second is that we need to say that we are waiting for you when you make this decision to come back, because you are valuable, equally valuable for us. The person who's living abroad might be an ambassador, economic, cultural ambassador, and do for Ukraine there sometimes much more than this person can do for Ukraine staying in Ukraine. It is also possible. That's why about returning of Ukrainians, we need to talk using the word of unity of Ukrainians, and we need to work not only on the governmental level, because of course these opportunities that the state might implement, the government might implement, may be stronger only if they are made stronger by the role of business and civil society. I agree completely, and here I would like to break our trajectory, our direction of communication a little bit, because in the audience we have representative of a very interesting generation. Anton Hanopolsky, I would like please to give the mic to Anton. He's the person who is unique in various aspects. First of all, 3 months before full-scale invasion, graduating from one of the educational institutions in Israel, Anton returned, and he has been here all this time. So could you please say what makes you stay here in this country? What are you doing and why? Because Tatiana was talking about opportunities, and it seems to me that this is the key aspect that we would like to hear your story. Yes, I absolutely agree. Hi, everyone. Could you please switch on the mic? Yes, hi, everyone. My name is Anton. 3 years ago, 3 months before the beginning of the full-scale invasion, I returned to Ukraine from Israel, where I was working in the biggest scientific research institute in Israel. I was a chemist there. I have pretty rare specialty, and together with partner, we launched startup. It's a small company that is dealing with the development of modern research models for medicine. It's around the world. It's a highly ineffective process, despite the fact that it's a huge industry. And Novo Nordisk company is the first company in Europe, the classic discovery company. And we are helping such companies to develop drugs in the most effective way using modern models that help make those medicine active. We do this in Ukraine with those technologies that you have learned there, that you brought here, and here together with Mr. Yefemenko, you are working on this huge project. It took us 3 years. We have developed our own technologies that we patented in the USA as of now, and these technologies are being used by us and by our clients for testing for testing medicines. So the whole technology, the skill, the team. I'm the oldest. I'm 25. I'm the oldest in the team as of now, because in Ukraine we do not have qualified biologists at all. If to look at the graduates of biological faculty of Kief National University, then the first place for employment is Novopochta company. Then will be companies Deal and Smil. I think you know about them as well. It's just the thing that Pressy and several more companies, these are such islands of biotech available in Ukraine. They have maybe maximum 500 jobs as of now, but around the world, it's already 3% of world GDP. So you need to understand that it's the fastest growing area. And as far as I understand, you got lucky, relatively speaking, because you ended up in that niche that you are really good at. It is not yet full here in Ukraine. But it's full of opportunities and options for development with business, with state, maybe with state sector. But in any case, here creating new jobs. What should be done for so that young people who graduate in other countries come here and make the same choice, in your opinion? It seems to me it should be opportunities and it should be positions that bring some kind of challenge for these people. European conjecture, especially scientific one, I'm going to talk about my area because I'm not really a great specialist in any other area. Scientific conjuncture in the world is pretty slow, and to get from postgraduate student to at least leader of the group, 10 years, they need 10 years. We do not have we do not have such scientific groups or leaders of scientific groups, and Ukraine has such opportunities to create such jobs from the scratch and to attract those people who may be not that qualified, as for instance, professor of Harvard University, but still enough is enough qualification to conduct great research where we are at right now. Thank you. Thank you. I believe that it's a very decent example and extremely interesting story that should be repeated more often in Ukraine. Thank you, Anton. Thank you. You wanted to say something, yes? Yes, actually, thanks a lot for this example of Anton. It's an amazing example that everyone had to hear today, and several examples from myself. So yes, Ukraine is similar to our historic Athens, just, steppe field, wild field where you can do important things right here and now. In the Ministry of Economy, we have a program called Creative Ukraine. These are graduates of top universities that have returned to Ukraine to work in the Ministry of Economy. This is amazing program. And for example, Julia returned. She was studying in Italy. She is working on Euro integrational matters. Soon I will go to the screening to Brussels, and we are preparing lots of presentations. We are getting ready. And yesterday, for example, we had such a situation where we are sitting with Ola Stefanishina, with Julia, and she was saying, Tatiana, it's happening. I feel that I am taking part in extremely important processes for my country. And I think there are so many examples like Julia, like Anton, because people might be motivated by the fact that in Ukraine, historic processes are taking place right now. And to be relevant to those historic processes, to feel that you are building that state where you want to live, that's what should motivate people to return. Maybe it's a little bit romanticized, but that's how it is. Well, it's cool and it's really inspirational. I would then please could you join to this statement of Tatiana Artur, the final remark concerning what should be done and where to find this vibe and this match so that it can really happen, this returning, this making people look for new jobs. Well, let me try to answer with metaphor. 1 year ago, we understood what is work UA as a metaphor. We realized that work UA is an airport of dreams, where every vacancy that is in this airport is a plane. And if a person finds, really finds their dream job, then there is this feeling that they are flying, because each of us has definitely felt that. And actually, when it's a pretty amped metaphor, that's how it's going on, because it looks like different companies, it's like various countries. And the work of barista, for instance, in Italy, in Nicaragua, and in the USA, and in England, will be absolutely different, because it's just different culture. And no one has even mention that, for instance, in the USA, it's worse or better than in Italy. It's just different. And and each company has to learn to talk about them in such a way so that the person wants to make this journey and not the other one, to stay with them. And I believe that every founder created this company for some reason. He's baking bread and he's not dealing with car repairing or biologists or chemists. If a person has passion, then the person can talk about it in such a way that really, Artur, we can feel that. Yes, yes. And my last statement about HRD. What is the key function? It looks like HRD is a CEO of avia companies, and when they send this plane, if this person can really tell amazingly about the company, so that it's really the person that can give wings. And if this paradigm, every HRD start thinking what to do for people around them to be with wings, for them to fly to their work, I think that our country might still show amazing examples for all of the world. Thank you. Yulia, please, your reflection. What to do? First of all, practical. Just yesterday, I returned from Brussels, where we had one day meeting. What have I brought, and what European countries are going to do, and services of employment. By the way, youth, yes, it's always top topic. Children and unemployed people, how to make them go to labor market and so on and so forth. Yesterday, we discussed, and now we are going to offer to do that. It's actually people of pension age already, and as of now, once again, I looked at the graduates. People are ready to work. They want to work. What will I offer to do after what I heard yesterday? If person gets pension but is still ready to work more, then we, as employment service, according to our current legislation, just can look for some job place, consultants, so on and so forth. But I would offer to re-educate people without any kind of age limitations. And because now, with the help of the funds of unemployment fund, we will be able to do that. But the most important thing for us to employ them is to re-educate them. Now, Europe and the European state services of employment moving towards that. We are going to work with our veterans and people with disabilities. Our legislation is going to change. We will have differently defined disability. We will have differently defined the opportunity to work for people with disabilities. And taking into account that I'm the head of the service of employment, I would like to say that since in Sarachanka or Petrikivka we do not have work UA, I'm really trying so that this place of dream was the service of employment, and we are changing our approach. We have individual approach, and we, as you know, such small state recruiters. We are teaching, we are educating our people with Israeli Trauma Coalition, with lots of other organizations concerning work, concerning different experience, and the percentage of employers that are saying right now that people might come from you not motivated just to get some kind of tick in the box. So trust me, it's much lower now. If you haven't been with us yet, if you haven't used our services, I invite you, and I'm ready to personally help you, and so that we can cooperate with your company. I just wanted to say about the veterans, because it's extremely important matter. It happens so that exactly today we signed not yet announced memorandum with the Ministry of Veterans, and in the nearest days we will announce approach to active hiring of veterans, because this challenge we still need to pass through, to go through. The war will come to a halt, then we will go to victory, and lots of people will be coming back. We need to find this opportunity to adapt veterans, to know how to work with them, and we already need to start doing that. Yes, that's definitely like that, and thank you for this information and for this news. I'm pretty assured that we will read it in some official news from WorkUI, how it's going to work further, and what benefit it might bring to the labor market as a whole.
It will probably be primitive, but I hope it will still be significant. One main task of our evolution is to ensure our continuous existence, and we could see the situation that some companies blackmail their employees and require them to come back to Ukraine, and they lost. There were other companies who won, because if you ask people who came back, they will say that they decided to come back to people and because of people. So developing the value, the importance of what you do as an organization, and working to unite people around the senses and the products, and then people will come back on their own. Thank you very much. I would like to suggest the following. Probably, if we speak about values and the importance of increasing the value of every person, should we probably rename HRD to HCD, Human Capital Directors? That's just a thought I got, and probably we can further think about it and can be a marker of the changed approach. It's about narratives. Until we have human resource, it is not human-centered approach, and it's not only about management, it's about co-action. I will even further increase the heat. Should we remain them into HVD? And it is very important that HRs find real masters of their affairs. People who are in love with what they do become real masters. Thank you, dear colleagues, for this very interesting